The hum of the containment field was the only sound in the amphitheater, until the growl started. It was low at first, a bass note that seemed to vibrate the bones of everyone in the room. Alien students shifted uneasily in their seats, claws tapping, tendrils twitching, wings folding tighter. The lecture hall, which had moments ago been buzzing with idle chatter, now held a collective breath. They had seen holograms of the creature before. Everyone had. But seeing it in the flesh was something else entirely. The Vorkanian Death-Stalker. A predator from the stone worlds of Vorkanian, known across the galaxy as a living weapon. Its exoskeletal plates shimmered under the overhead lights, iridescent with hues that shifted like oil on water. A set of 6 eyes glowed faintly, tracking movement with terrifying precision. Its forelimbs ended in curved talons sharp enough to shear through reinforced alloy, and its serrated mandibles clicked in a rhythm that could only mean agitation. Professor Zerlin, towering and emerald-scaled, stood beside the containment field, his elongated mouth stretched in what passed for a proud smile. He tapped a claw against the projector remote, bringing up a hollow display above his head. "Observe, students," he began, his deep voice reverberating through the room. "The apex predator of Vorkanian. The Death-Stalker has not only survived but dominated an environment where even the atmosphere seeks to kill. It requires storms of liquid ammonia, magnetic chaos, and tectonic upheavals to sustain its ecosystem. No other predator has mastered it. None but this one." The students leaned forward, some with fascination, others with obvious dread. A Kiraki student flared her wings and hissed under her breath. A Jelvarian scribbled furiously into his hollow notes, every ridge on his forehead pulsing with stress. And then there was Daniel, the lone human in the class, sitting about 3 rows from the front, his posture oddly relaxed compared to the others. While most aliens sat rigid, ready to leap from their seats if the containment field failed, Daniel leaned back, one leg crossed over the other. His dark hair fell slightly into his eyes, and instead of scribbling notes, or trembling with fear, he simply watched. Curious but calm. Professor Zerlin's eyes scanned the room, taking in the mixture of awe and terror with satisfaction. "The Vorkanian Death-Stalker has been recorded taking down armored vehicles. It has neutralized entire squads of trained soldiers. Its bite carries a paralytic toxin that can stop a heart in less than 3 beats. The growl deepened, vibrating the floor. Every student froze. The creature's 6 eyes narrowed, not on the professor, not on the glowing hollow display, but on Daniel. Its mandibles clicked faster, sharper. Its tail, tipped with a venomous stinger, thrashed against the containment barrier with a crackle of energy. The Death-Stalker was ignoring everyone else. It had locked onto the human. Gasps rippled through the amphitheater. A few students shifted toward the exits. Someone hissed, "It's targeting him!" Professor Zerlin's claws twitched nervously. He adjusted the containment field controls, but the beast didn't relax. If anything, its fury escalated. And then Daniel did something none of them expected. He raised his hand. Not in fear. Not to shield himself. He raised it like someone might raise a hand to pet a dog. "Can I?" he asked casually, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. Half the room erupted in protest. The Kiraki shrieked in disbelief, wings flaring. The Jelvarian dropped his stylus. The crowned student beside Daniel slapped all 4 of his hands against his eyes as though refusing to witness what was about to happen. "Human!" Professor Zerlin barked, his composure breaking. "Do not approach the containment field!" Daniel tilted his head. "You sure? He doesn't look mad. More frustrated." "He?" a student whispered incredulously. The Death-Stalker slammed its talons against the energy barrier again, sending sparks scattering. The air was thick with the scent of ozone. But Daniel didn't flinch. If anything, he leaned forward in his seat, studying the creature's body language like a puzzle waiting to be solved. The others couldn't understand it. To them, the Death-Stalker was terror incarnate. To Daniel, it looked like something else. Something familiar. The professor tried to reassert control, his frill flaring with authority. "Students, this is a predator beyond comprehension. It operates on pure instinct. It has never been domesticated, never been calmed, never been reasoned with. It exists only to kill. But Daniel only smiled faintly. You ever think maybe that's because nobody tried the right approach? The amphitheater filled with shocked silence. Professor Zerlin's throat sac swelled with suppressed fury. This is not a game, human. That creature is. The Death-Stalker interrupted with another growl, this one lower, almost impatient. Its tail lashed again, but slower this time, like a restless animal denied attention. Daniel stood. The collective sound of claws, wings, and limbs retreating from him was almost comical. Every alien student shifted away as if his very movement would doom them all. Sit down! The professor roared. You will not! But Daniel was already moving toward the containment field. Calm, steady steps, his hands open and relaxed at his sides. His eyes stayed on the beast, his posture loose, unthreatening. The Death-Stalker tracked him, 6 eyes glinting. The mandibles clicked, once, twice. The amphitheater was a heartbeat away from chaos. Daniel stopped right at the barrier, tilting his head slightly, as if regarding a restless guard dog behind a fence. He lifted one hand slowly, palm forward, just inches from the shimmering energy field. Easy there, big guy, he murmured. You're just scared, aren't you? All these eyes on you. All this noise. Bet it feels like a cage. Professor Zerlin was nearly apoplectic. Human, you are attempting communication with a Death-Stalker, a beast incapable of understanding anything beyond slaughter. But the growl had softened. Every student noticed it. Instead of rattling the bones, it was now more like a deep purr of thunder in the distance. The beast's tail lowered slightly, no longer whipping. Its 6 eyes blinked, slowly, deliberately. Daniel grinned faintly. See? Not so scary when you know how to talk to them. The amphitheater was dead silent. No one dared move. For the first time in the Academy's history, the Vorkanian Death-Stalker wasn't terrifying the class. It was staring at one of them, at the human, with something none of the students or the professor had ever seen before. Recognition. The containment field hummed, holding strong, but there was no mistaking the shift. The predator wasn't trying to attack anymore. It was waiting. And Daniel, the only human in the class, was smiling like he just met a new friend. The stakes were suddenly, terrifyingly clear. If the human was right, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about the Death-Stalker, about predators, about instincts, about impossibility, was wrong. If he was wrong, they were about to watch him die in front of them all. And as Daniel pressed his palm gently against the barrier, his calm voice breaking the silence once more, every student leaned forward despite themselves. So, he asked softly, eyes never leaving the creatures, can I scratch behind your ears? The Death-Stalker's growl rumbled like thunder under the floor, and yet Daniel didn't flinch. He stood at the barrier with one hand still raised, calm and steady, while the entire amphitheater leaned back as though the creature might shatter the field and butcher them all. Professor Zerlin's claws twitched across the control panel, his voice taut with fury and fear. Step away, human! This is not bravado. The Vorkanian Death-Stalker recognizes prey. It hunts confidence. Your stillness does not protect you, it lures it. Daniel smirked faintly without looking away. Funny. Where I'm from, we say dogs smell fear. Guess the same principle applies, huh? Dogs? Sputtered a crowned student, his forearms gesturing wildly. That thing is not a domesticated quadruped from a backwater world. It is death incarnate. The Death-Stalker blinked again, 6 eyes narrowing. It pressed its mandibles against the containment field, close enough that the barrier sparked. Instead of snarling, however, it lingered, nose to the glow, head tilted slightly, the way curious animals sometimes do when sensing something they can't define. Daniel's voice dropped into a softer tone. Easy, buddy. I know you're tired of the cage. A hush fell across the amphitheater. Alien students exchanged glances, some wide-eyed, some skeptical, others horrified. The Death-Stalker was listening. Listening. Professor, the Gelvarian student whispered nervously. Is Is this documented? Has any creature? No, Zerlin snapped. His frill flared wide, a display of agitation. No predator of this classification has ever responded in such a way. This is impossible. The field should not even allow for calmness. The Death-Stalker perceives anything alive as threat or prey. Daniel chuckled softly. Guess I'm either. Gasps rippled through the seats. The professor stormed forward, towering over the human. You will sit down immediately. This demonstration was meant to educate, not to indulge your primitive antics. But even as Zerlin loomed, the Death-Stalker hissed, not at Daniel, but at the professor. The sound was sharper this time, cutting through the hall like a blade drawn across metal. Sparks leapt where its talons scraped the barrier, and every student recoiled. Daniel raised a hand, not to defend himself, but as if soothing both sides of a quarrel. See? You're spooking him. He doesn't like your tone. Zerlin's scales flushed from green to a deep scarlet, pure rage. Human arrogance will be the death of you all! The Death-Stalker's tail struck the barrier again, and alarms flared. The containment field flickered once, dangerously thin. Students panicked, several bolted for the exits, while others hissed or shrieked in panic. But Daniel didn't move. He stepped closer. The growl subsided. The beast's posture shifted from striking to crouching, its forelimbs folding closer to its chest. Its mandibles stopped clicking. It was waiting. Good boy, Daniel said softly, almost fondly. Yeah. You're not mad, are you? You're just lonely. The Death-Stalker lowered its head. The amphitheater collectively forgot how to breathe. No, Zerlin whispered, his voice cracking with disbelief. This cannot. He spun toward the students. Do not misinterpret. The Death-Stalker is playing. It lures prey into a false sense of security. That is its way. He is moments from being torn apart. But even as he shouted, Daniel crouched down, placing his palm flat against the glowing barrier. The Death-Stalker mirrored the motion, pressing its armored snout against the same spot. For one heart-stopping moment, man and monster were separated only by a shimmering field of energy. And the predator purred. It was unmistakable. A resonant vibration, low and steady, filling the space not with dread but with something eerily close to contentment. Every student stared, too stunned to move. Even those halfway to the exit stopped in place, their eyes wide, disbelief etched across every feature. Daniel tilted his head. See? All he wanted was a little kindness. Not too different from home, really. What is your home? Whispered the Jelvarian, voice trembling. Earth, Daniel replied easily. He looked back at the Death-Stalker, smiling. We've got a saying there are no bad dogs, only bad owners. The amphitheater exploded into overlapping reactions. Dogs? Owner? He thinks it can be owned? This is madness, madness. Professor Zerlin nearly collapsed against the control console, his eyes wide, his composure shattered. He muttered to himself, claws trembling. This defies classification. A Death-Stalker cannot. Daniel stood again, dusting his palms casually against his trousers. Maybe the real problem isn't the Death-Stalker. Maybe it's you guys. You look at him and only see a weapon. You never thought he might just want to be understood. The professor snapped his head up, scales burning crimson again. Do you presume to lecture me, human? I have spent my life cataloging apex species. I have dissected more predators than your kind has years in the stars. Yeah, Daniel said lightly. And that's probably why none of them like you. The Death-Stalker growled again, as though punctuating the point. The students laughed nervously, an odd, fearful sound, but laughter nonetheless. For the first time in the Academy's history, someone had openly mocked Professor Zerlin and survived. The professor, humiliated and enraged, slammed a clawed fist onto the console. Enough! This farce ends now. The demonstration will proceed to controlled aggression protocols. You will all witness what happens when this beast is challenged directly. He reached for the controls. The room erupted in chaos again. Several students cried out, pleading for him to stop. The containment field shimmered, its energy shifting, preparing to lower into a combat simulation environment. Daniel's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Don't. Zerlin froze. Something in the human's tone, calm, quiet, but carrying the weight of command, made even the professor hesitate. Why not? Zerlin spat. Daniel stepped between the console and the barrier, his eyes never leaving the Death-Stalker. Because you're about to make the biggest mistake of your career. You push him, he'll fight back. And when he does, none of your data, none of your classifications, none of your ego is going to matter. He'll win. You'll lose. And he'll be right back to being the monster you think he is. The Death-Stalker pressed its armored snout against the barrier again, close to Daniel's back. The symbolism was clear, even if no one wanted to believe it. The most feared predator in the galaxy was standing with the human. The professor's hands trembled over the controls. His pride warred with his survival instincts. His eyes darted between the calm human and the watching crowd of students. For the first time, it wasn't the Death-Stalker that frightened them. It was the possibility that the human might be right. And that was something no textbook had prepared them for. The hum of the containment field shifted, and everyone knew what it meant before the alarms confirmed it. Professor Zerlin had pressed the release sequence. The barrier shimmered, its energy matrix unraveling layer by layer, peeling back the invisible wall that separated the students from the Vorkanian Death-Stalker. Sparks cascaded down the edges of the cage like falling stars. The beast's growl deepened, vibrating the amphitheater until even the floor panels rattled. "Professor!" shrieked the Karaki, her wings flaring wide. "You'll kill us all!" The Gelvarian clutched his notes to his chest, rocking back and forth in horror. The crowned student beside Daniel scrambled 3 rows up, all 4 arms clawing at the seating as if distance alone could guarantee survival. But Daniel didn't move. He stood calm as ever, hands at his sides, eyes locked on the beast. "You don't have to do this," Daniel said, his voice firm but level. "Leave him in peace." Professor Zerlin's frill flared wide, a grotesque fan of crimson and emerald. His pride had consumed him. "You will not undermine me in my own hall, human. This is science. This is control. You think you've tamed the untamable? Watch and learn. It will not see you as master. It will see you as meat." The final layer of the containment field dissolved with a hiss. The barrier dropped. The Death-Stalker was free. Chaos erupted. Students screamed, some leaping over benches to flee, others huddling low in terror. The beast stepped forward, talons clacking against the amphitheater floor. Its 6 eyes burned with light, scanning the room. Its stinger tail arched high, dripping venom that hissed when it struck the ground. Every instinct in every alien screamed the same thing: run. But Daniel stood his ground. The Death-Stalker's mandibles clicked once, twice. Then its gaze settled, not on the fleeing students, not on the trembling professor, but on Daniel. It moved. A blur of spiked exoskeleton and thunderous limbs, faster than the eye could follow. The amphitheater gasped as one. The Gelvarian fainted outright. Even Zerlin stumbled back, eyes wide in horror, too late to stop what he had unleashed. The beast bore down on the human, then stopped. Less than a breath away, its armored head dipped low, mandibles brushing Daniel's chest but not piercing. The massive predator crouched before him, tail lowering, a sound like a purr rumbling from deep within its chest. Daniel smiled faintly. "Knew it." The amphitheater was frozen in disbelief. Students gawked, their voices a rising tide of shock. It's submitting? Impossible! He should be dead. Why isn't he dead?" Professor Zerlin's claws trembled at his sides. "No, no, no, no!" His voice cracked. "This isn't submission. This is misinterpretation. The Death-Stalker is feigning." But the beast wasn't feigning. It shifted closer, nuzzling against Daniel's shoulder like an affectionate hound. Daniel raised one hand and scratched gently behind its armored crest, just at the edge of the mandibles. The Death-Stalker let out a sound so unthinkable, so impossible, it silenced even the screams. A chuff. A rumbling exhale of contentment. Daniel laughed softly. See? Not so bad. Just needed someone to treat you right. Every alien in the room reeled. Their entire worldview, centuries of study, every classification and record, all shattered by the sight of the galaxy's most feared predator acting like a loyal companion to a human. The Death-Stalker curled its tail protectively around Daniel, its stinger angled outward like a shield. Any student who moved too close was met with a warning hiss. The message was clear: this wasn't a wild beast anymore. It had chosen. And it had chosen him. You see? Daniel called to the class, his tone calm but firm. You keep calling it a monster, a killer, a weapon. But maybe that's just projection. You expect violence, so that's all you ever get. Nobody bothered to wonder what it actually wants. The crowned student, trembling, croaked. What does it want? Daniel smiled, scratching the predator's head as its mandibles clicked in delight. The same thing everything wants. To not be alone. To not be treated like a thing. Gasps echoed again. The implications rippled through every alien mind. If the Death-Stalker could bond, if it could trust, then every assumption about apex predators, about untamable species, about the divide between beast and being, was wrong. Zerlin's voice cracked with fury. You will not turn my lecture into sentimental heresy. He reached for the emergency override on the wall, his claws punching the keypad. If the Death-Stalker won't prove itself a weapon, then I will force it to. The aggression protocols will activate, the chamber will flood with pain stimulants, and we will see it for what it truly is. The room exploded into protest. Professor, don't! You'll kill us all! It's already bonded, can't you see? But Zerlin's pride burned too brightly. He slammed the final control. The amphitheater groaned as hidden vents opened. A sickly mist hissed from the walls, flooding toward the floor. Pain stimulants, calibrated specifically for the Death-Stalker's neural structure, designed to drive it into uncontrollable rage. The beast shuddered. Its 6 eyes flared, mandibles snapping, tail thrashing wildly. The rumbling purr turned into a roar so loud it shook dust from the ceiling. Students screamed, bolting in all directions. Seats splintered under the stampede. The Death-Stalker's claws dug trenches in the metal floor. Its eyes darted wildly, anger, confusion, agony. And then it looked at Daniel. The amphitheater stilled, if only for a heartbeat, as predator and human locked eyes. Daniel could see it, fear buried in the fury. He moved fast, scrambling onto the beast's armored shoulder just as its tail lashed wildly. He grabbed the ridges along its head, leaning close, shouting over the roar. Easy, big guy. It's not your fault, it's them. Focus on me. Just me. The Death-Stalker thrashed, nearly throwing him off. Venom hissed as the tail slammed into a wall, denting steel. Students ducked, shrieking. Professor Zerlin backed away, horrified as his plan spiraled out of control. Daniel clung tighter, his voice urgent. I know it hurts. I know you're angry. But you don't have to fight it. Look at me. You're not alone anymore. I've got you. The beast shuddered again. Its mandibles clicked, but slower now. The tail stopped thrashing. The roar turned back into a growl, then a deep rumble. Daniel scratched just behind its armored crest again, steady, rhythmic. His voice dropped into a low, soothing murmur. That's it. You're okay. Just breathe. You're not their experiment anymore. You're with me. The stimulants still poured into the room, thickening the air, but the impossible was happening. Instead of succumbing to madness, the Death-Stalker was calming, because the human on its back refused to let go. Gasps rose from the scattered students. Even those who had fled to the upper levels stopped, watching in awe. Daniel pressed his forehead against the beast's armored skull, his voice fierce now, cutting through the chaos. They'll never understand you. But I do. You're not their monster. You're mine. The Death-Stalker let out a rumbling chuff, lowering itself to the ground. Its tail curled protectively around Daniel, shielding him from the mist. Professor Zerlin staggered back, eyes wide with terror and disbelief. No, no, this cannot be. The protocols are absolute. The Death-Stalker should be in blood frenzy. Daniel looked up, his eyes blazing. Guess you underestimated what trust can do. The amphitheater shook with one final roar, not of rage, but of defiance. The Death-Stalker smashed its tail into the walls, shattering the stimulant vents. Sparks and debris rained down as the toxic mist dissipated. When the smoke cleared, there stood Daniel, one hand resting calmly on the predator's head. The galaxy's deadliest beast crouched beside him, loyal, protective, no longer a weapon of fear but a partner. The class stared, trembling, breathless. And in that silence, the truth was undeniable. The Vorkanian Death-Stalker, apex predator, galactic nightmare, killer of thousands, had chosen a human. The Death-Stalker's tail slammed down, shaking the floor hard enough that dust rained from the lecture hall's ceiling. A growl reverberated through the chamber, primal and bone-deep. Students from across the galaxy scrambled, chairs toppled, holographic consoles blinked wildly. Panic should have consumed the room, but all eyes stayed locked on the single human standing motionless before the monster. Daniel didn't flinch. He just smiled. "Can I?" he repeated softly, his hand still held out like a peace offering. The Vorkanian Death-Stalker's thousand serrated teeth gleamed as it leaned forward, nostrils flaring. Every xenobiologist, every soldier in training, every scholar in the amphitheater leaned back instinctively, expecting the beast to lunge. Instead, the creature sniffed at the human's outstretched hand. Once. Twice. Then a rumbling sound, half growl, half purr, escaped its throat. And then it lowered its massive, armored head. The silence that followed was deafening. Professor R.H. Core's mandibles twitched uncontrollably. His voice, when it returned, was a rasp. It submitted. To a student. To a prey creature. Daniel didn't hear him. His hand was resting against scales hotter than any forge, scratching gently at the Death-Stalker's temple ridge. The monster leaned in, tail curling around his legs with surprising gentleness. A ripple of disbelief passed through the crowd like a living wave. "Impossible," hissed the Eltherian. "Their kind are apex predators across 5 sectors. They do not submit. Not even to their own handlers. Perhaps it sees him as food it wishes to savor," muttered another. But when Daniel moved his hand to scratch beneath one of the beast's ear frills, the Death-Stalker let out a sound so disarmingly domestic that half the audience nearly fainted. It was a chuffing noise, a happy, satisfied rumble. Something between a purr and a sigh. The galaxy's deadliest predator sounded like a house cat. R.H. Core staggered forward, outrage overtaking fear. "Unacceptable! This was meant to demonstrate dominance! To showcase control!" His voice cracked as he jabbed a claw toward Daniel. "You have undermined a lesson with human trickery." Daniel looked up, eyebrow raised, while his other hand rubbed along the Death-Stalker's jaw. "Trickery? I just asked politely. Guess nobody tried that before." A chorus of gasps swept the hall. Several species blinked their triple or compound eyes in confusion. Politeness? Respect? Toward a nightmare predator? The very concept was absurd. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The Death-Stalker, weapon, executioner, apex terror across the galaxy, was now laying its massive body on the floor like a loyal hound at Daniel's feet. Its claws scraped sparks from the metal tiles as it settled in, but the menace was gone. It looked comfortable. Professor R.H. Core's carapace darkened with fury. He activated his control gauntlet and barked. "Rise! Tear the human apart! Obey your master!" The gauntlet pulsed with red energy. The Death-Stalker twitched. For a heartbeat, everyone thought the monster would obey. Its muscles tensed, jaws opening wide, the temperature in the hall spiking as its inner furnace prepared a strike. But then Daniel spoke. Calm. Gentle. Like addressing an old friend. "Easy, big guy. You don't have to listen to him anymore." The creature froze. The gauntlet's red glow sputtered. Sparks snapped across its surface as the Death-Stalker's bioluminescent lines shifted, red to amber, amber to a calm blue. It turned its head, slowly, deliberately, away from the professor and back toward Daniel. And then it snapped its tail once, hard enough to knock the gauntlet clean from our H-Core's arm. The control device shattered against the far wall. Chaos erupted. "Blasphemy!" shrieked one alien student. "This defies natural law." "Not law," another murmured, staring in awe. "Something else, something deeper." Professor RH-Core reeled back, mandibles quivering in rage and fear. "Do you understand what you've done, human? You've broken millennia of control systems. That beast was bred for war." Daniel tilted his head, stroking the Death-Stalker's cheek ridge. "And maybe it's tired of being used as a weapon. Ever think of that?" The Death-Stalker leaned into his hand as if to confirm it. The amphitheater dissolved into shouting. Some demanded Daniel be arrested for witchcraft or subversion. Others insisted this was evidence of humanity's unique place among the stars. A few whispered something more dangerous, that the Death-Stalker wasn't broken, it had simply chosen. The words spread like fire, choice. The professor tried one last time, scrambling toward the beast with a concealed shock pike. He raised it high, aiming for the soft joint beneath its neck plating. "Move!" shouted a student. But Daniel didn't move. He didn't need to. The Death-Stalker's eyes flared crimson for a heartbeat as it swung its head sideways. With terrifying speed, it pinned RH-Core to the ground, claws resting at his throat. The professor screamed, flailing. "Stop!" Daniel said sharply. The monster froze. "Let him go." Slowly, carefully, the Death-Stalker lifted its claw. It didn't kill. It didn't maim. It simply stepped back, curling protectively around Daniel again. The room was silent once more. When Daniel finally spoke, his voice was steady, but his words cut deeper than any blade. "You wanted to show them control," he said to the trembling professor. "I think they learned something better, respect." The aftermath rippled far beyond the lecture hall. Footage spread within hours. Every alien with a recorder had captured it. By the end of the day, it reached the council itself. Entire species debated it furiously. Some declared humanity dangerously subversive. "They can tame death itself with words," one senator hissed. "What else will they tame?" Others saw possibility. "If they can communicate with what we thought uncommunicable," an elder murmured. "Perhaps humans are not prey, not predator, but something new." Meanwhile, Daniel sat cross-legged in the now empty hall, the Death-Stalker curled beside him like an oversized dog. His classmates, those brave enough to remain, approached in hushed awe. "How?" whispered a crystalline student, facets gleaming with reflected light. Daniel shrugged. "Back on Earth, we've got animals way scarier than this guy. Wolves, bears, even little house cats. You don't control them. You earn their trust." The Death-Stalker chuffed in agreement, pressing its head against his shoulder. The lesson was over. But the galaxy's understanding of humanity had only begun to shift. In the days that followed, new rules were drafted, research proposals launched, and protests sparked across sectors. Some demanded all Death-Stalkers be exterminated now that their control could be compromised. Others demanded they be freed, treated as equals rather than tools of war. At the heart of it all was a single human who had asked the simplest of questions. "Can I?" That question had undone centuries of fear and domination. Professor RH-Core vanished soon after, stripped of his teaching license, his reputation shattered. Rumors claimed he joined mercenary fleets, swearing vengeance on the human anomaly. Daniel? He just went back to class the next day, notebook under one arm, the galaxy's most feared predator padding loyally at his side. When another student nervously asked, "What if it turns on you?" Daniel only smiled. "Then I guess I'll have to scratch harder." The Death-Stalker wagged its spiked tail like a puppy. And that's how the galaxy learned that sometimes, the strongest weapon isn't strength, fear, or technology. It's kindness. End of story.